everybody. Welcome back to The Natural You. Today I've got an amazing and exciting guest, Daniel Pernet. Daniel's originally from Australia and now lives in the Netherlands. So welcome, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Tim. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Brilliant, man. So I first met Daniel on a Curra Wild a couple of years ago and realized that we have a lot in common and really nature-based guy. And so on this next series, it was a natural, really easy ask to get him on. And I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about his story and hope you can share some pearls with us. So Daniel, tell us a little bit about where you grew up, and then perhaps after that, we can segue in how you got into Europe and specifically the Netherlands.
Yeah, I grew up in Australia, mostly in Melbourne in the south. I was growing up in more a suburban area, so sure, it's the city of Melbourne, but not so big high-rises and apartment complexes as I'm used to now in Europe. And I think growing up, I just spent so much time outside. You know, I was constantly outside after school every day, during every recess and lunch at school, and probably didn't really realize that consciously. How much time we were just able to have outside in the nature, connected to the greenery and the grass that we have so much of in Australia, and also the beautiful animals. But yeah, I guess growing up and moving to a city like Amsterdam, which is a bit more built up and fast paced, I really appreciate that I had that opportunity as a child to be outside all the time. Yeah, it was a great life in Australia.
And obviously, you were sitting in a suburban environment. Did you have kind of opportunities to go sort of camping in more remote places and things like that?
I didn't really camp so much when I was a kid, but we did go into the bush quite a bit. Like every Christmas, we would go out into the bush. It's kind of a holiday park, I guess, but little cabins quite separated from each other and lots of animals around. And yeah, that was a special experience that I remember going to every year.
Cool. And do you have a special memory of like a nature contact that from that time, or where you kind of thought, hey, well, I'm really connected to this, or I really feel drawn to this, or something they gave you?
Yeah, the animals. So my grandparents lived also in the suburbs, but it was a bit more naturey. And I lived with them for 5 years while I was attending university. And it would just be stepping outside the back door and seeing an echidna go under the fence. Or I remember being asleep at nighttime, and the koalas, they sleep for about 20, 22 hours a day. But when it's mating season, they're out at night and they're making god awful noises outside my bedroom window. They're screaming. They're really loud, brutal creatures. And we also had a lot of beautiful birds, and we engaged with them a lot. So they became quite tame with us. The magpies and the kookaburras, we hand fed them. We had relationships with individual animals. You could always tell it's the same bird that was coming back to engage with us. Yeah, that was very special.
Brilliant. At university, you were studying?
I studied in Melbourne at RMIT. So yeah, like I said, living with my grandparents for 5 years while I was studying at university. And after I graduated, I did a big trip through Europe with my best friend and fell in love with Europe. I just loved the cultural diversity and different languages and the different foods and the different peoples all in such a small area compared to Australia, which you can drive and drive and drive and drive and speak the same language and eat the same food and see the same people. So that was really special to me, and I decided I wanted to live in Europe after that. And first I worked as a chiropractor in Melbourne for a few months, and then I moved to the central coast of New South Wales on the east coast of Australia, which was beautiful. I was by the beach, I was by the water, I was right next to the mountains. I could go outside every single day. But as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old in a small country town wasn't really stimulating enough for me. And all the people my age had either left and gone to a city to study university, or they're getting married and having kids, which I respect a lot, but that just wasn't my life path at that point. So then I decided to move to Europe, and I moved to Amsterdam.
Brilliant. And then did you start working for someone, or what steps did you take to? Because I know you have your own practice now. What sort of steps did you take to get to that point?
Yeah, first I worked for someone else in a practice in a city called Delft. That was the first practice that I worked in the Netherlands. And then I met with a good friend of mine, Daniel Lewis, and we started a practice in Amsterdam. And after a year, he went back to Australia to live. So I carried on that practice in Amsterdam, and that's turned into what it is today. We had two practices. We had Amsterdam and Delft. And last year, I actually sold the practice in Delft. And last week, I had my last shift there. So that was a super beautiful moment, because I was working there for 11 years. It was my first practice in the Netherlands, and I saw families grow up. There's this one beautiful family I was taking care of this entire time, and their girls were 10 and 12, I think, when I first arrived. And now they're 21, 23, however old they are, graduating, going to university. One of the girls just did a big van life camping trip through Australia. So she brought me back a shell from the beaches of Australia, and it's such a beautiful moment to reflect on taking care of these gorgeous families for such a long period of time.
I must say that is one of the blessings I think we have as chiropractors, as compared to other health professionals who might have interactions with people or families, but it's quite interspersed. Whereas, the people we take care of, particularly those who kind of on wellness program or on maintenance type visits, where you're seeing them, once a month, a couple of times a month, whatever it is, that you see those kids, like you say. You were just telling me just before we came on air how you went to go and see, 6 or 7 day old baby at their house, and the chances are you're going to see that baby all the way through. And I've had that, newborn kids, and now they're going off to high school and getting older and going away and then coming back to live in the same area, and some of them getting married. So you really get to feel part of that whole cycle. I think perhaps there are some other professions out there, but it's so nice to be able to witness that and in a very beautiful way. And if they do develop issues, we can help them, but also it's about helping them just stay healthy as well. So it's such a blessing, I think.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, I always say it's a lifestyle. And so these wellness families, they're coming to us because they choose to be healthy and they choose to look after themselves. It's a bit different to maybe a symptom-based model of care where someone is going to go see the practitioner because they have a problem that they want to resolve or they have some challenges. Of course, people have challenges along the way when they're under wellness care, but their rhythm is coming in because they want to. And it's really beautiful to work with people because they want to. And I think a big part of my growth as a chiropractor, at the start of my practice, coming from a bit more of a scarcity mindset, it was like, how can we help every single person? How can I bend over backwards to help this person who has these needs in front of me? But the more I grew and the more I became confident in myself and connected to what it is that I have to give, the more I realized that if we build a community of people who come to us because they want to be there, it actually really helps the community as a whole, because I truly believe healing happens in community. And so if people are showing up with the same intention into our space, everyone's getting better results, rather than people coming because they have to or because their husband or wife told them they have to. So that was a big change for me.
Brilliant. And was that a kind of a gradual thing, or was it a kind of a moment where you heard something or read something?
I think a bit of both. I mean, it was a little bit of a gradual thing because when I opened my practice, I used every single last euro I had in the bank account, and I had to pay my CA and I had to pay the rent. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know, how's this going to go? This is going to be really stressful. And I remember saying to my CA before we opened, it's like, okay, anyone calls, no matter what time it is, I'm 20 minutes away, book them in. I can be there in 20 minutes. So book them in so that I can make sure that we take care of your salary and take care of the rent. But over time, that kind of attitude towards my practice meant that I was burning out myself. I wasn't looking after myself enough. I wasn't spending enough time on getting myself in alignment. And so I started to change these little things. That became a little bit more gradual over time. But then, I can't remember any specific moments, but along the way, learning just to protect my energy and work with people, like I said, who really choosing to come and see us. It's much better experience in practice, and we get better results.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier lifestyle and making chiropractic part of that lifestyle, and you touched on now protecting your energy. What other things, other than going to see your chiropractor, do you do that you see as part of your lifestyle that you perhaps do a bit more than perhaps other people or other chiropractors you've seen? What do you add in to maintain your lifestyle? And then how much of that do you share with your clients? And how does that protect your energy?
Yeah, I noticed that the better I look after myself, the better I'm adjusting and the better that my clients are doing. And so health is a very high value for me, and I put a lot of energy into living a healthy life. And I believe that nature is what gives us everything we need to be healthy. And when we look at a lot of modern health problems, what we're seeing is not necessarily that the body is failing, but there's a mismatch between what our body's needs are and what our environment is that we live in. And so we get these different symptoms, let's say, and then a bunch of symptoms become a diagnosis if someone goes and sees the medical field. But at the end of the day, that's just the body communicating to us that there's something that is not really the body's not getting what it needs. So for me, a lot of what it means to be healthy is looking back to what does nature provide us as animals. Sometimes we forget that we are part of the animal kingdom. Even when I'm having this conversation with clients, sometimes they're shocked when they hear that, we're an animal, that we're a biological creature. We sometimes think that we're above nature and that we have been able to technologically advance and we've been able to manipulate nature and we're able to give ourselves everything we need to survive by being disconnected from nature. But we are nature. There is no separation. And when we honor and respect what it is that nature gives to us, then we can be more in alignment with what our health needs are. So for me, I'm really focusing on being healthy through being as natural as I possibly can be.
And where would you say, if you had to pick the three biggest of those natural things that you do, what would they be? Sort of the three big wins for you that you feel make the biggest impact?
Well, I think movement, nourishment, and sleep are three of the biggest pillars. Movement, we used to move in very varied ways. We used to move our bodies in different directions. We used to be building and jumping and hunting and bringing back the deer to the tribe and cooking a fire and squatting over the fire. We were very, very, movement focused creatures. And I think humans are not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We're not the biggest in the animal kingdom, but we're one of the most adaptable when it comes to different types of movements. We can walk, we can run, we can climb, we can swim, we can throw. That's quite a unique movement in the animal kingdom. And so we've lost a lot of those types of movements in the modern world, whether we're working more sedentary behind a computer, which is very common for people, or even us as chiropractors. We're more active, which is, I'm really, really grateful for the fact that we can be active while we're working. But there are a lot of repetitive movements that we're doing in the same direction over and over again, whether we're leaning over a table or whatever type of adjustments or technique we're practicing. So I think trying to look back to what we used to do as movement and try and cultivate as much of that as possible in my daily life. That's I find that's an important one for me.
Brilliant. So that's the first one.
Nourishment.
So what's your particular, are you kind of sort of paleo, veggie, or what's your kind of slant, or do you cycle them? What's your current sort of pattern?
Yeah, it's a challenging one. I'm really not a huge fan of these different labels and these different diets that we have. And yes, they can be helpful if someone is trying to make a change, and then they can follow these guidelines, they can follow these rules, and that can really help you make a shift. But in the long term, I don't think it really serves us so well. And I also think a lot of these different types of diets are quite extreme or quite restrictive. I'm even seeing that, in practice, some people eat in a certain way, whether it's vegan or whether it's carnivore or anywhere in between, in quite a restrictive way. If you're eating a vegan diet, it's a very socially acceptable way to restrict your food intake, which I don't think is such a healthy relationship to have to food. So I've been on a bit of a journey with food myself. I was vegetarian for 2 years, which was not good for my body, but it started when we were riding our bikes through the countryside and we came across a field of cows, and I love cows. I think they're just the most gorgeous creatures, and they are so emotional, and you can have a really great connection with the big, beautiful eyes of a cow. And I said to my girlfriend, I love cows. And she just responded back, well, why are you eating them then?
Good question.
It's a great question. And coupled with the Netflix propaganda documentary Cowspiracy that I watched at the time, I was like, okay, I'm going vegetarian. This is the right way to go. But I was undernourished. I remember we would eat dinner, and if we put on a TV show after dinner, anytime someone ate food on this TV show, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. And what we would do quite commonly actually is order a vegetarian pizza after dinner, because we just were not satiated and we were not satisfied. And so we went through a big shift with thinking about food and looking at food. And now if you ask me how I eat, I think it's whole, unprocessed, local as much as you can. If it grew in the ground, if it swam in the ocean, if it walked on land, I think that's something that is good for you to eat. I base all my meals pretty much around animal proteins. So I eat a lot of animal protein, but it's not about, for me at least, just eating what comes from the supermarket. I physically go to farms in my area and I buy food from these farms. And so
That's cool.
I
And
have a
you
relationship.
and did you say do they do that for everyone, or is it just you've been able to cultivate those relationships?
One of the farms I go to, they have a shop that is available to everyone, but we started really asking questions about where does our food come from. And so we went and we started a relationship with the butcher from this farm and asked questions. How do you look after the cows? What are the cows fed? What do you do if there's a sick cow? What is the care and the management that you have of these animals? Because how these animals are looked after is going to be dictating the state of the health of cow. And
Yeah.
we're eating that cow. So the more we found out about our individual food sources and where that was coming from, the more we were able to align with what I think is what the body needs. And I do think it's
And
important
do
to
you
eat.
break that down to seasonal as well? Because I know that's quite a challenge. Is like, particularly in Europe, these are cold winters,
Mm-hmm,
and a lot of things don't grow unless they're greenhouse or bringing in food from other countries.
mm-hmm.
And I know there's sort of a seasonal approach, which I think is great. But as long as you can get access to kind of a good variety, I think. How are
Yep.
you finding that?
Yeah, so the good thing about animal-based proteins is they're available all year. It's actually a good way to store energy through the winter by putting it into an animal, right? Putting it into a cow. And a cow is just the most incredible thing. It eats grass and it turns it into cote de boeuf, and it turns it into milk and cheese and bone broth and all these different types of really nourishing sources of food. So through the winter, that's a really good source of energy. Through the summer months, obviously, there's more, let's say, fruits available. But in the Netherlands, it's not very fruit rich environment. We have apples and we have pears and we have berries. So I do try. I mean, I like a pineapple every now and then, and I'll eat a pineapple. I'm not going to say no to it, but it's not going to be a main source of food for me living in the environment I live in. And nature is so perfect that the UV light that a certain fruit grew under, so let's say you're getting a pineapple from the Caribbean or the tropics, there's a much higher UV light there available to people. And so you actually need that UV light to process that fruit properly. And when we're living in Northern Europe and there's less UV light available, our body doesn't process those tropical fruits as well. So I think it's great to eat seasonal and also even better to eat local as much as we can. It's not always feasible, but as much as we can.
Yeah, brilliant. And then your sleep. Your third pillar or your third big one is the sleep. What's your sort of rhythm or ideal routine?
Sleep, it's a big one. It's the one we forget a bit sometimes, I think, because it's just so part of everyday life. And we're asleep, so we don't really feel like we're making so many decisions about it compared to how we choose to move and how we choose to eat. But sleep is such a vital moment of our day in order to look after our bodies and our health. And I think that goes hand in hand a little bit with light and circadian rhythm. I try and follow the circadian rhythm or try and regulate my circadian rhythm as much as possible. We are humans, and the type of animal we are is called diurnal. So we're used to being awake during the daylight hours. You have diurnal creatures like humans and many birds. You have nocturnal creatures that come out at night. And then you have some creatures that live more in the dawn and the dusk, like the rabbits and the deer and things like this. But humans are diurnal and we're designed to be awake when the sun is available to us. And one of the big mismatches in our modern world is that we've created electricity, which allows us to turn on the lights, and we're getting all these bright lights coming into our eyes at nighttime, and it's keeping our bodies more alert, it's keeping our cortisol levels higher, it's suppressing our melatonin, our sleep hormone. So people's sleep rhythms are really being shifted, and we're designed to be asleep when it's dark. So what I try and do is follow the light as much as I can. So when the sun rises in the morning, I'm going outside and I'm letting that light come into my eyes, because that light is telling my body what time of the day it is, and it's giving my brain vital information about what I should be doing, whether I should be starting to ramp up my energy and my activity for the day if it's in the morning and I'm starting to make my hormones, my serotonin, my dopamine, my melatonin, my stress hormones. And then again, as much as possible, being outside during the brightest hours of the day, which in the summer gives us vitamin D, in the winter doesn't in the Netherlands, but in the summer it gives us vitamin D. And then when the sun goes down at night is letting the house be dark, turning off the bright LED lights. I use blue light blocking glasses if I want to look at my phone or my computer or maybe watch an episode of something, so that my body knows it's time to wind down and get ready for sleep. And a lot of the physical regenerative sleep, the deep sleep, is more the first half of the night between, let's say, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. for many people. And if we're going to bed later than that time, we're missing a lot of our deep sleep. And if you do that day in, day out, it can have a big impact on our ability to recover and to heal.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those three are probably, are really the big winners, aren't they? Something you say, like, you might think you make a decision about what time you go to bed, but there's so many other things you can do to make that easier, and so that when you get that point, you're tired. I mean, I get an alert going on my phone, goes, "Are you start getting ready for bed?"
Mm-hmm.
I go, actually, yeah, maybe at this time. But like you say, I'm like you. I try and get that early morning light and help reset things. And those small decisions can pay big dividends. So that's really, really important to try and plan. We all have our plan, like where we're going to get our exercise today. Which day is going to hard day, slow day, different types of movement patterns, as you say. But you've got to sort of schedule those, find the time where you can put that into your day. And then the food, as you say, obviously that's a huge decision, and where you shop and how you shop and in what state you shop. Makes a big difference too, right? It's like going to the supermarket when you're hungry. You're gonna end up spending a few euro more. That's for sure.
And I think one of the challenges is that what it means to be healthy, if we look back to its nature that gives us our health and how we were living before the agricultural revolution, everything we were doing in our day was in alignment with our needs. So it was something that meant that we were healthy. We were eating things from our local environment. We were moving in order to be able to survive and go and find that food or build shelter or play within our community. And we were going to sleep when the sun went down. Maybe we'd have a little campfire and we'd get around and have some rituals by the campfire, but we know that a fire actually doesn't even suppress melatonin, so you still have a good night's sleep when you sit around the campfire. And these days we have to choose to make these we have to choose how to be healthy. So we have to find a moment in the day to move in a way that our body needs, whereas before we would never even have to think about it. I think that's one of the challenges.
Right? It would just be part of your natural life. And so we sort of have to schedule. We almost have to schedule nature. And like I sometimes have to schedule nature time, right? It's like, like I'm going for a walk. Like, why? Because I haven't been outside today. So, and some people won't even do that. And then wonder why their mood tanks or their energy tanks, and they start rowing with their family, whatever it is, simply because they haven't even identified that that's a part of themselves. And hard to address something when you don't even realize you're not doing it right. So yeah. So you mentioned there eat fruits and in different countries and things like that, and I know you went and did a trip down in the Americas. I think it was last year, and perhaps you can just tell us what inspired you to do that, and then perhaps a little bit about some of the places you went to and the nature you encountered, and how you adapted your these movement, nourishing, sleep things around those kind of patterns, because there would have been different hemisphere even, and different close to the equator, I'm guessing, different length of days and different environments. And how did you please just tell us a little bit about your kind of journey and trip.
Yeah, an amazing adventure through South America last year. Bought a Land Cruiser, built a bed into it, and just drove where the wind was blowing, I guess. It was a kind of 10-year anniversary. I had my practice for 10 years, so it was a gift to myself to go on this adventure. I'm a very adventurous person at heart. I love to, if I have a fork in the roads and one of the paths is more overgrown and looks a bit more difficult, I'm definitely going to be taking that path. And then, of course, having a practice is an amazing experience, and I love the freedom that comes with being an entrepreneur and having my own practice. The one downside to it, or the shadow side to that light, is it's not very feasible to step away for an extended period of time, and what's happening in the practice is constantly on my mind. So this was the first chance I gave to myself to really step away and go on a big adventure. And one of my goals was to not know what day of the week it was, and that's much easier when I'm a bit disconnected from the modern rhythms of modern life, the rhythms of modern life. So traveled through South America, went on some beautiful wild camping trips in Brazil, in Peru, and, Bolivia. I remember one big trip I did in Brazil. I was hiking through Chapada Diamantina, which is in the state of Bahia. Gorgeous, gorgeous place. And I was barefoot hiking, watching the snakes kind of scuttle off into the bush. And I didn't see so many people during that time, but the people I did, they were so shocked I was doing it by myself, and I was doing it barefoot because they're all going with their guides and being supported with their food being carried and their water being taken care of through their trip. And for me, doing itself in a self-sustaining way and taking care of all my needs just gets me much more in alignment with the nature and the environment that I'm in.
And how did you prepare for that? Did you do courses on survival, or did you read books, or how did you prepare? Because that's obviously a big undertaking, and it can be risky. How did you prepare for that?
Yeah, I have done some survival courses before, but to be honest, I was not really using many of those skills when I was on this trip. I did take my food with me, and I did take water with me, but I did find I had one of those kind of straws that you can drink from water sources that cleans the water, and in the end I found very clean river water anyway. So I wasn't hunting and I wasn't building my own shelter. I had a wonderful modern solo trekking tent that I put up at the end of each day. So yeah, did it more in a modern way, let's say, with more modern features available.
But you felt confident enough in the environment to navigate that alone, which takes a certain mindset, that adventurous mindset, as you said, and then knowing that you can survive, or you got ways to look after yourself and avoid the snakes. And
yeah, a lot of people, I think, are scared of nature because they don't understand it and they think everything's out to get you. I mean, as an Australian, I have met countless people, especially in South America, to be honest, who were like, I'm never going to Australia because there are so many spiders and so many snakes. And so there's just this misconception of what it means to be out in and around nature. And it's sad that so many people are disconnected from that.
Yeah, I think that is for a lot of people is that fear of the nasties. And I'm from Africa, and there's things that can kill you, right? The people local to those areas, they can smell snakes. They know where the snakes are going to be. So it's, you say, the more in touch you get with nature. And I think for those people who are listening who perhaps are afraid of going out into nature because there might be a spider or a bug or a midge or something that's going to bite them, it's perhaps about just doing something small and going on a path on your own that's well demarcated and a route, and then just taking notice of that, and maybe going with a friend, and then later doing the same path on your own and just getting more confident. And when we start to observe, and not just looking, I mean observing with our ears and smelling and our feet and our hands, we can start taking in more and more information. And I think you sort of alluded to that, is that nature will provide, and we're just so disconnected from even seeing the signals. We wouldn't know what to look out for, because we're just so disconnected from even the alerts, and so that heightens the fear. And once people get familiar with it, they go, oh, actually, this is safe. I know if I go off the path, then this might happen, and then you can gradually move towards that.
Yeah, I remember when I went into the Amazon, I did go with a guide because I wanted to see as many animals as possible, and I know that would give me the best chance. And you're talking about smelling the snakes. He literally smelt where the animals were, because there's these huge big trees, and we're looking out for monkeys, we're looking for toucans, we're looking for the elusive jaguar as well, of course. But he would all of a sudden just be like, stop and start to listen. And then he would find a group of monkeys, some howler monkeys or some spider monkeys in the trees. And I asked him, what makes you stop? How do you know to actually stop and start looking now? Because it's so dense, there's so much foliage around that you can't just be looking all the time. And he's like, I smell them. I smell the howler monkeys, and when I smell them, I know to start looking, and then I start to use my ears. He's grown up in the Amazon. He understands how the environment works, and he's just so connected to it. It was beautiful to watch.
And the human sense of smell is highly acute. It can be really acute. I mean, we can smell like minute particles. I'm not sure if it's true, but I've heard that that humans can smell rain, that petrichor, the smell of rain in a far off place. It's more acute than a shark smelling blood in the water in terms of the parts per million or whatever it is.
Wow.
So sharks are pretty acute in smelling blood in the water, but we can smell that coming. And so there got to be other things that we are highly attuned to, and those can be trained. You think of people who can smell wine and tell you exactly which area it comes from within within a few hundred meters of the place, and they're on the other side of the world. And so we have this ability. Obviously, some people have naturally gifted more than others, and like in all senses. So we all have that ability. But if we don't train it, it just wastes away. And we have different parts of our brain that are utilized and can access different areas. And I did a talk not so long ago on the spiritual side of our brain. We actually have networks and parts of our brain that are cued into being spiritual, into the things that we would call spirituality. And they give us those areas of our brain, when they're well developed, gives us more resilience. And people who have those areas of the brain that are well developed, those kind of, let's call them spiritual areas, they are much less prone to depression because they've exercised that part of their brain. And so if you've only exercised that part of your brain, you can look at it even in a clinical term, in pain. Like certain people's brains are wired for pain because that's all they've been focusing on. And so when we focus on certain areas, we can develop different skills, and just our senses can start. So when you go out into nature, perhaps just tap into the sounds and just listen to them. And sometimes I like to listen without trying to identify. It's quite hard. You listen to a bird and go, what is it? What is it? What is it? And then sometimes you go, just listen. I remember my mom used to listen to classical music, and her friend who was really into that says, well, what are you listening to? She says, I don't know. Who is it, Tchaikovsky or Beethoven or what? She says, well, yeah, I think it's Beethoven. He said, well, which symphony is it? I don't know. And he says, you know what? That's so beautiful because you're just listening to listen.
Yep.
And not listening to identify that part of this particular movement or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so coming in without that knowing and just listening to birds is beautiful. It has a profound effect on our nervous systems too, a calming effect. And so if I'm listening and I'm in my analytical mind, I'm going, oh, is that a wren or a robin or whatever it is? But to just listen, and when you go into a new environment, it's lovely just to listen and hear the sounds without that identification.
Yeah.
So perhaps a beginner's mind is lovely, to just kind of listen to the beauty of the bird song.
I definitely agree. And I think nature's a great place to be able to tune into the intuitive side of things rather than the labeling side of things. And, you mentioned birdsong as an example. We've evolved with birds, and birds have different calls and different cries. They have alarm calls and they have singing calls. And when they're singing, the environment is safe. And so our nervous systems understands that when a bird is singing, because we co-evolved with birds, we understand that the environment is safe. So it literally puts us into our parasympathetics. And when I did one of my survival courses, we would have to go and sit in the exact same place for an hour, 2 hours, every sunrise and every sunset to just get in tune with the rhythm of nature in that spot. What are some of the sounds you hear that are rhythmical, that are coming in every day? What are some of the sounds that are different, that maybe not designed to be in that environment? And the more we sat and the more we connected with that, the more the nature started to accept us. Day 1, day 2, it was maybe challenging or sometimes even a little bit boring because it was quite a similar experience. But the deeper we went into that week and the more we sat in that same spot, the more nature accepted us. And I would see different animals and I would see different insects and I would see more of movement and more experiences that came to me because nature had accepted me in that environment.
And just in a few days. So imagine if you did that all the time, if you were immersed in that. I mean, if you were living in that environment where you did, 3 months in that place, or you lived in that place, how connected you would be. And we talk about indigenous wisdom. They just collect that information from around them without ever thinking about it. It just is. And so that I always find that fascinating, and how quickly we can respond to that and get into those rhythms, because we are totally wired and connected in that way, to perceive that. So, and that intuitive side, with, as you say, without labeling, I think it's a lovely way to put it. And as someone who wants to know, it can be a challenge, right? And that's also good to know later, but also just to hear and feel and smell and is good too, and honing that intuitive side.
I think it also gives us that resilience you were talking about, because in the modern world we really love to be comfortable, and there's a reason for that. I mean, it conserves energy, it keeps us safe. We love comfort. We love to take the stairs instead of the elevator. We love to set our thermometers to 21 degrees the whole winter. We love to rug up when it's nice and cold. But that is compromising our ability to develop resilience, because when you're living out with nature, you're living in the elements, you're experiencing all these different things. You're experiencing the temperature shifts from the cold in the morning to the hotter in the midday, and then dropping back into the cold at night. And that gives your body certain signals about what to do and how to act. And if we're just going for comfort all the time, we're missing a lot of those signals, and we're not really developing our ability to be resilient to the different experiences that are available to us.
And I think to do that, you have to train yourself too. So you said if there's a fork in the road, you're more likely to take the difficult one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's obviously part of your nature, and like wanting to see the unknown or experience or explore that explorative side or true side of yourself. But I think that also for people, let's say, who don't like being cold. Like, well, I didn't like being cold. I always used to call myself coldie. I don't like the cold. But, I'd always choose the warm over the cold. And so then I did cold water exposure just to kind of force myself into it and go, actually, change your relationship to the cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might not be as pleasant. Cold plunge is never as pleasant as a sauna for me. I'd rather do, 20 minutes in the sauna than 2 or 3 minutes in the ice, right? It's a different experience. Some people might feel differently, but that being able to do that and be able to step into that discomfort, exercising sometimes can be hard. You've got to challenge that. If you want to get stronger muscles, you have to challenge them. If you want to experience new things, you're going to have to be a little bit more adventurous. And so if you are scared of nature, maybe taking a little baby step and stressing yourself will allow you to expand. And of course, if you're training to run a 5K and you're on the couch, you don't go and run a 5K the first time. You just go for a little walk and slowly build it up. And I think there's so many areas of our life where we're resistant or scared or don't want to do that. But you mentioned that resilience in so many different aspects, and the resilience in our physical world builds into our emotional and mental world, and the other way around too, right? If you have a big kind of mental challenge and you face that and you process and you do the work and come out of the end, it's going to help you, and that's going to help you plan for something else. So I think they all feed into each other. Very nice.
Yeah, growth comes from stress, and stress is this big bad word in our society, but actually everything that we grow from was originally a stress. Exercising is a form of stress. Our femur is the biggest bone in our body because it carries the most load. When you're born, it's not the biggest bone in the body at all. It's the same as all the others, but it grows much more thicker and stronger with stress, with load. And a cold plunge is a great way to stress the body and teach you some more mental resilience. I do a cold plunge with the members of my community once a week on a Sunday in the lake, all through winter as well. And every single time I show up, I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And this little voice inside the back of my head's like, why? Why just skip it? You don't need to do it. And I jump in and it's uncomfortable. And then after that, I feel alive and I feel amazing. And it teaches me that I can be in the moment and I can do something that's difficult. And I think that translates to a lot of other areas of my life. And maybe you don't want to do a cold plunge, but maybe you can finish with 30 seconds of a cold shower. And maybe if you don't want to do that, you can start by going for a walk outside and just exposing your chest to the cold air instead of putting on your scarf and rugging up in your jacket. There are so many different ways you can have the same kind of experience without needing to do it so intensely. But what's going to be a little challenge for you? What's going to be a little moment that puts you out of your comfort zone so you can aim for growth?
Yeah, and there are people who can help you with that. There are different programs. If you want to go and do the deep dive and go, actually, I need some support in that. Reach out to someone like Daniel or someone in your community that's doing a cold plunge or a Wim Hof type of thing. Destiny and I used to run a program like that, and we still can do that for you. So if you want to do a cold plunge, or if you want to go do a long run or a hike, there are running groups, that are catered to helping you do that. And so there are people, guides and assistants out there to help you. You don't have to do it on your own. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insights into how nature is part of us and heals us. And when we're out of alignment with that, we tend to end up with some signals, some symptoms, and then perhaps some diagnoses. So we don't want those. We want to be living a connected life. And if there's a parting word you'd like to share with the listeners, here's your spot before we sign out.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we think about symptoms, I think the body is always adapting to the environment. And whenever we feel something that creates discomfort or is labeled as a symptom, that's actually the body looking after you and helping you and trying to heal. So you're not broken. Every time you feel something, that's your body looking after you. Thank it, enjoy it, live it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Symptoms aren't bad. Very good. I
Exactly.
like it. I like it. What a great note to close on. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you sometime soon.
Thanks, Tim. It was fun. Thank you.
If you want to find out more about Daniel or reach out to him, his details for his socials on Instagram will be on the show notes. If you're interested in having a nature immersion experience, perhaps you haven't had anything like that before, you're a bit nervous, please reach out to me. We run nature immersion trips safely in the UK, catered to your specific needs, either on your own or in a small group. So reach out to me through the show notes, send Tim a message button is there, or you can go to the website, which is thenaturalU.uk, and send me a message through there. Thank you for being interested. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this with your friends. See you next time.